The night I lost my job, I expected my family to support me. Instead, my father started packing my belongings into garbage bags before I had even finished explaining what happened. My mother stood beside him, nodding in agreement. Then my sister smiled and asked a question that revealed exactly how they saw me. "Who's going to pay my car loan now?" she said. That was when I realized none of them cared that I had just lost everything. What they didn't know was that I had been keeping a secret for years. And that secret was about to change all our lives forever. The day I lost my job started like any other Tuesday. By lunchtime, everything I had spent 12 years building was gone. The company announced a restructuring. Entire departments were eliminated. My position was one of them. I packed my desk into a cardboard box while managers repeated phrases like, "difficult decision," and "nothing personal." None of it made the walk to my car any easier. The hardest part wasn't losing the paycheck. It was knowing how my family would react. For years, I had been their safety net. I paid half my parents' mortgage, covered unexpected bills, and quietly made my younger sister's car payments whenever she fell behind. She always fell behind. When I walked through the front door that evening, my father immediately noticed the box in my hands. "What happened?" he asked. "I got laid off." The room went silent. For a moment, I thought they were shocked for my sake. Then my mother spoke. "What are we going to do about the bills?" I stared at her. My sister looked up from her phone. "Wait. If you're unemployed, who's paying my car loan next month?" That question hurt more than losing the job. My father stood up and folded his arms. "You need to start figuring things out immediately," he said. An hour later, he was stuffing my clothes into garbage bags. "Your sister needs this room more than you do." I looked at all three of them. Not one person asked if I was okay. So I picked up my bags, walked out the front door, and carried with me the secret that would change everything. I spent that night in a budget hotel near the highway, sitting on the edge of a stiff mattress and staring at the garbage bags that now held most of my life. The silence felt strange. Not because I missed my family, because I finally realized how little they actually knew about me. For years, after finishing my regular job, I had spent nights building something of my own. While everyone thought I was watching television or working overtime, I was helping small businesses improve their operations through online consulting. At first, it was just extra income. Then, it became something much bigger. I never told my family because every time I earned more money, they found a new reason to spend it. A bigger car payment, another household emergency, a vacation they somehow couldn't afford. So I stayed quiet. 3 years earlier, I had used profits from the business to purchase a beach house through my company. It was intended as a long-term investment and future retreat. My family knew the property existed. They simply believed it belonged to a wealthy business partner. They never asked questions. That night, my phone buzzed with an email from a major client. The contract proposal I had been pursuing for months had finally been approved. I read the message twice. The deal would bring more revenue than my old salary ever had. For the first time since being fired, I smiled. Then I made a decision. I wouldn't tell my family anything. If they wanted to believe I had nothing left, I would let them. A few minutes later, I saw my sister's social media post. Apparently, she was celebrating my departure. The next few weeks told me everything I needed to know about my family. Not one of them called to ask how I was doing. Not my father. Not my mother. Not even my sister. It was as if I had disappeared the moment I stopped being useful. Meanwhile, I focused entirely on my consulting business. The new contract opened doors to other opportunities, and clients began recommending me to their partners. For the first time in years, my income wasn't being drained by someone else's problems. Through mutual friends, I occasionally heard updates about life back home. My sister had moved into my old room within days. She painted the walls, bought new furniture, and acted as if I had never lived there. My parents seemed convinced I would eventually come crawling back. They were wrong. Then reality started catching up with them. Without my monthly contributions, the household budget became much tighter. Bills that I had quietly covered for years suddenly became impossible to ignore. My sister missed a car payment. Then another. My father started working extra shifts. Arguments became more frequent. The same people who had called me a burden were now struggling to replace everything I had provided. I didn't celebrate it. I simply noticed. While their situation grew more stressful, mine continued improving. I signed 2 additional contracts and expanded my client list. One afternoon, a friend sent me photos from a family gathering I hadn't been invited to. Everyone was smiling, pretending everything was perfect. Then he mentioned something interesting. My parents had recently learned the beach house owner might be selling the property. And suddenly, they were very interested in finding out who owned it. A month later, the secret finally started unraveling. The beach house had become a topic of conversation throughout the area after property values along the coast surged. Several homes nearby had sold for record prices, and rumors spread that the owner of my property was considering selling as well. My sister heard about it first. According to a mutual friend, she immediately became interested. She spent days speculating about how much money the owner must be making. My parents joined the conversation. They all assumed the property belonged to some wealthy investor with connections they could only dream about. Then the truth surfaced. A public property records search connected the beach house to my consulting company. Another search revealed that I was the sole owner of that company. Within hours, the entire family knew. My father reportedly refused to believe it. He insisted there had to be some mistake. My mother reacted differently. She apparently sat in silence after learning the details, finally realizing that the son they had thrown out was financially more successful than anyone in the family. My sister's attitude changed overnight. The same person who had celebrated my departure suddenly started liking old photos and sending cheerful messages. Then the phone calls began. First my mother, then my father, then my sister. Apologies filled my voicemail. Regret filled their texts. I responded politely, but kept my distance. For weeks, they pushed for a meeting. Eventually, I agreed. Not because I wanted revenge, because I wanted closure. And for the first time in my life, the conversation would happen on my terms. We met on a Saturday afternoon at a small restaurant overlooking the marina. I arrived first. When my parents and sister walked in, they looked nervous. For the first time I could remember, they weren't acting like they had authority over me. They sat down quietly. My mother spoke first. We made a mistake. My father nodded. We were scared after you lost your job. We didn't handle it well. That was one way to describe throwing your son out the same night he lost his livelihood. Then my sister leaned forward. I never meant what I said about the car payments. I looked at her. You meant it at the time. None of them had a response. For the next hour, I calmly explained things they had ignored for years. How every emergency somehow became my responsibility. How every sacrifice was expected instead of appreciated. How losing my job revealed exactly where I stood in the family. The truth was uncomfortable. Good. Some truths should be. Eventually, my father cleared his throat. We just want things to go back to normal. There it was. The real reason for the meeting. Not guilt. Not accountability. Comfort. Normal had always benefited them. It never benefited me. I told them about the growth of my company, the future expansion plans, and the beach house investment. Their eyes widened. Then came the subtle suggestions about family helping family. I smiled politely. No. The word surprised them. I forgave them. But forgiveness didn't mean reopening the same door. An hour later, I stood alone outside my beach house, listening to the waves roll onto the shore. Losing my job felt devastating that night. Now I understood it had been the best thing that ever happened to me.